Hey everybody, I've got Steve Von Till of Neurosis, Harvestman, and he's now a writer. He recently released a volume of poetry called Harvestman on Astrophil Press, and we've just got him here for a few questions. Hello, Steve.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So, just to start off, because I'm actually I was a musician first as well, before I ever started writing any kind of poetry or anything. I just wanted to start off asking you, as far as coming to writing the new poems that you have, was that something that branched kind of organically from writing music and lyrics, or were you, did it feel like a separate pursuit, or I guess how did you come from, just writing lyrics and stuff to writing
That's a good question. I've basically written poetry for myself my entire adult life, probably since, starting college. I'd written punk rock lyrics since high school, but I wouldn't exactly call those poems.
Right.
As soon as I decided that I had more to say than screaming about society, to use words to go into to kind of give the more abstract and existential nature of humanity a voice in my own private universe. I've been writing it, but it's up until now, it's always just been, it's lived and died in my personal journals. I never had any intent to publish or to make any of it public. So really I'm 50 years old. And so, at one point last year, I realized that my poems have always just served as lyric fodder. They sit in, they sit in my typical quad-ruled composition notebooks until I need to write lyrics. And then I grab and I steal and I borrow. I don't borrow. I only steal. I steal lines and I steal phrases. I steal words. So the poems become kind of like word banks or places to go mining for lyrics, because lyrics have to fit, at least the way I write lyrics. I always write music first. And so the lyrics have to fit a very kind of a musical structure. They have to fit a tone. They have to fit what vowel sound you feel like hanging on. They need to have a certain cadence and rhythm. So it was really in kind of writing the lyrics to my most recent solo record where I had stolen two lines from a poem, and I felt extremely guilty about it, quite a bit more than usual, because I felt that the poem was perfect the way it was. And now I had just ruined it by taking the best two lines to finish a song. And that I'd sacrificed this poem because I needed two lines to finish a lyric. And it was kind of at that moment where I thought that maybe that was an interesting kind of connection to bridge a pathway into writing poems with the express intent of not butchering them later for lyrics and letting them have their own life as poems. And so I just kind of gave myself a challenge and wrote every day, whether it's like breaks at school or in the morning before leaving for work, or, just finding brief times to just focus on writing a poem from beginning to end, including, editing it and making it into a final form that I thought said everything it needed to say. And so it was really that stealing process that got me to do this. And once I had 23 of them, including the one I stole the two lines from, and I realized none of them had titles. And I felt like that seemed like it was a body of work. And I still didn't know what I would do with it. I thought I'd go to Kinko's and make chapbooks for friends and family, or,
Right, sure.
Something of that nature. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, maybe it's time to own the fact that I've been writing poetry my whole life. Maybe I can rise up against the voices of self-doubt and imposter syndrome and just throw it out there. So I thought by connecting it to my 20 years of solo lyrics and kind of displaying the difference between a lyric and a poem, but also releasing it in tandem with my most recent record, that the lyric writing process inspired the poems, that maybe I would find an audience built in with the people who listen to my music. And then, yeah, in that process of researching, you know, being a DIY guy and always releasing our own music and just, you know, never waiting for anybody else, I just contacted Duncan Barlow from Astrophil Press at the University of South Dakota, who's an old friend and old from bands over the years, just about book printing. You know, he said, let me do it. Let me take it on. These are good. You should absolutely own them. And so, yeah, just the, you know, so that was very validating as well. So it was really kind of the examining my own process, and then learning to get out of my way and letting what was going to happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, you know, one thing, like I was really interested in DIY, and you know, that's part of what I admire about Neurosis and then Neurot recordings and everything, was that level of it. And it's actually interesting because kind of going first from the music scene and then going into you know, the poetry scene, especially like kind of university related publications, there is an element of DIY there, but I guess it's not quite to the same extent of like music labels. Like it's not as common to have, like, you know, someone who's a poet or something start their own press solely because no one else wants to publish their poems, and then from there develop an aesthetic, you know, like Discord Records or Neurot or something like that. So I don't know, like I definitely thought that was interesting that you were coming into poetry. And that's something where, like, in my own kind of relation to the literary world and the scene, I, you know, especially I think with Heavy Feather Review, we try and be pretty open to different experiences. So I guess all that to say, I'm glad you did, you know, get over that, and you had a place to publish your writing with the press. It is a really beautiful book too, so they did a really good job with that. And you did the layout as well, correct?
Yeah, well, I worked with a lino cut artist in Mexico City, Mazat, Mazatl, who recommended to me by an artist friend, Thomas Tupper. We both can our obsessions on ancient mythologies and petroglyphs and rock carvings and you know, ancient shamanic practices, and I knew I wanted a woodcut look, you know, a lino cut look, but I felt like the world probably didn't need another book of poems with some, like, you know, sublime landscape things or things that were too clean. So what I like about his stuff is it does reference old world technology and old world styles of art, like I think my poetry does, but it's modern and edgy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's a really great cover, and I can totally see that. I've got my copy here. I'll just show it to whatever extent it's visible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it's a great cover. I was actually interested in that, you know, reading both the poems and your lyrics to an extent, you know, and I don't know a whole lot about maybe like Gnosticism, or I guess you were saying the shamanic practices that were in there. What, were there any like specific areas that were an influence of the poetry that you write, or I guess kind of where is that coming from? I wouldn't even know where to begin kind of looking that stuff up.
It's hard to say. It's more of the all-encompassing life journey of just I think even since being a kid, I've always had a certain longing for knowing what it would feel like to have a deeper connection with the earth or with the land or landscape or ritual, you know, because obviously I'm a child of the westward migrations, and my family didn't stop until they reached the Pacific Ocean, you know, generation after generation after generation. And so I always felt like somewhere along the line our modern world lost something. You know, there's a lot of great aspects to where we're at and privileged aspects to where we're at. But you know, I don't know. I feel that somewhere along the way we were severed from, for lack of a better word, because I think it's often used in a way that's very flaky, but I think we've lost a connection of spirit, a spiritual connection. And I'm not talking about religion, you know, or anything like that, but just in that kind of contemplation of the reason why language itself even exists is because we needed to talk about something more than food, shelter, and reproduction,
right?
You know, and so those kind of deep longings to express a deeper nature, I think, has always been with me, and it morphs and changes and follows different rabbit holes. You know, eventually I ended up moving to North Idaho. I'm on 12 acres of forest. I feel like I've gotten a deeper connection than I did as a youth in the city, but still, you know, it's that exploring the microcosm of my own life's, you know, pathetic little trials and tribulations and how they relate to the bigger existential nature of all of humanity and all of its spirals in all the different multitudes of possibility within that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really comes out on the poems a lot. You know, one of the things, and it comes out in both the poems and the lyrics, but it's kind of like you were saying, you know, when you were describing just the necessities of lyrics, like the cadence and all of that, that element of interconnectedness seems a little bit more direct and a little bit, you know, less filtered in the new poems. Like I really liked how in a lot of the poems, there would be images of nature, and then you would be talking about kind of the feeling of that or like intellectualizing that, but it was all in these interesting metaphors that like slipped into each other. And so, you know, if you think about it logically and piece out like one metaphor after the other, it was like they were all connected and had this really like contingent relationship. It actually reminded me, you know, just I guess interesting food for thought of this ecological philosopher. It's around now, Timothy Morton. I'm reading a book on that he's wrote about Timothy Morton.
Timothy Morton. Okay.
Yeah, he wrote a book about hyper objects, and like probably oversimply, hyper objects like are gigantic objects that are too big for humans to perceive. So big, in fact, that we're like enmeshed in those objects, and you know we really can't get out of them. And I guess in terms of the relationship with nature, that's kind of what it felt like for me, you know, in the poems, was that everything was so interconnected that you couldn't really take any one element of the poem, whether, you know, that be an image of, you know, a landscape or one of the animals in the poems. You couldn't actually kind of remove them. So all that to say, I think that ended up coming out really interestingly in the poems.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and you know, it's not even really planned. You know, I think my process is largely accidental and very go with the flow. And so, you know, a lot of the times I don't even know what I mean, and I've had to learn to be okay with that, because that's, I mean, I don't write prose, I don't lecture about poetry, so it's not my.
Oh, Are you still there? Hello?